They called him the King of Texas. Don Carlo Vitale didn't negotiate, he dictated. His estate was a fortress, and his word was gospel. Rule number 1, no outsiders, ever. But on a sweltering August night, Lola, his terrified maid, had no choice. She brought the only family she had left, her wheelchair-bound grandmother, Diane, into the king's domain. The iron gates swung open. Texas heat radiated off white marble floors. Lola's breath caught as she heard his footsteps echo through the corridor. Measured, deliberate, final. Don Carlo appeared, blood still fresh on his cufflinks from whatever business he'd just concluded. Lola froze, her hands gripping the handles of her grandmother's wheelchair, waiting for the order that would make them both disappear. But the command never came. Instead, she heard something impossible. The whisper of expensive Italian wool hitting the floor. When she looked up, the most powerful man in Houston wasn't reaching for his gun. He was on both knees before her grandmother's wheelchair, his head bowed so low it nearly touched Diane's lap. And on his face, for the first time in 35 years, were tears. "Na, Diane." The words broke from his throat in fractured Italian. "Sei viva, you're alive." Behind them, 6 bodyguards stood frozen, hands hovering near weapons they didn't dare draw. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked through impossible seconds. Somewhere in the estate, someone dropped a glass. Lola's mind shattered trying to understand. This man, who'd once made a business partner disappear for using the wrong entrance, was trembling before her grandmother like a child before his mother. Diane's weathered hand, twisted from years in the wheelchair, reached out slowly. Her fingers, still strong despite everything, touched Carlo's face. She tilted his chin up, studying him through eyes that fought against confusion. "Bambino?" Her voice cracked with recognition, breaking through the fog. "My little boy, you're so tall now." And that's when the King of Texas did something no one in that house had ever witnessed. He wept. Not silent tears. Not dignified grief. But the raw, desperate crying of a 12-year-old orphan who'd been lost for 35 years and finally, impossibly, found his way home. Lola stumbled backward, her mind racing. "What little boy? What is happening?" One of the bodyguards shifted. Carlo's head snapped up, his face transforming in an instant from vulnerable child to lethal dawn. "Leave us." His voice cut like a blade. "All of you. Now." They scattered like shadows. When the last footstep faded, Carlo turned back to Diane, his voice dropping to a whisper only the 3 of them could hear. "I searched for you. For 35 years, I searched everywhere. I thought you were dead." Diane's thumb brushed away his tears. "I thought the same about you after Keith took you away. After what those boys did to you in Brooklyn." "Brooklyn?" Lola's world tilted. Her grandmother knew him, in Brooklyn? Carlo's hand covered Diane's, pressing it against his face like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. "You saved my life that night. And every night after, when you let me stay. You were the only one who..." His voice broke completely. Diane smiled, that fierce, knowing smile Lola had seen 1,000 times but never understood until this moment. "You still haven't eaten properly, have you, Bambino? Still too thin. Still carrying the world like you have to prove something." And just like that, the most dangerous man in Texas became a scolded child, nodding sheepishly through his tears. Lola's knees finally gave out. She sank onto the marble floor, watching the impossible reshape into truth before her eyes. This was going to change everything. The call came at 10:17 p.m., just as the Texas heat reached its breaking point. Lola's phone buzzed against the marble countertop she'd been polishing for the last hour, and her stomach dropped before she even saw the number. Sunset Gardens Care Facility. "Miss Lindley, I'm so sorry to call this late, but..." The director's voice cracked with barely controlled panic. "The power grid just failed. We're on backup generators, but with this heat wave, we've got 43 residents, and the systems are already overheating. Your grandmother's oxygen concentrator. Lola didn't hear the rest. Her mind had already gone silent, that terrible quiet that comes right before impossible decisions. She had 2 hours left on her shift. 2 hours of dusting, polishing, and erasing any trace of her existence from Don Carlo Vitali's pristine estate before dawn, when he'd returned from whatever dark business kept him out past midnight. 2 hours, and then she could leave through the service entrance, drive the 20 minutes to Sunset Gardens, and pray her grandmother was still breathing. 2 hours Diane didn't have. Lola's hands shook as she gripped the phone. She thought of Marcus, the previous maid's nephew, who'd made the mistake of cutting through the estate's east wing to save 30 seconds. They found his car in the lake 3 days later. Accident, the police said. Everyone knew better. Rule number 1, no outsiders, ever. But Diane was dying. The decision made itself. 40 minutes later, Lola's beat-up Honda idled outside the service entrance, her grandmother's wheelchair folded in the trunk, Diane herself bundled in blankets despite the suffocating heat. The care facility had pressed the portable oxygen tank into Lola's arms with guilty relief, already moving on to the next crisis. "Where are we going, baby?" Diane's voice drifted, soft and confused. "Somewhere safe, Grandma. Just for tonight. I promise." The lie tasted like ash. The service entrance code still worked, small mercies. Lola wheeled Diane through the kitchen, past the walk-in freezer, and into the narrow hallway that led to the maid's quarters. Her quarters. The small room where she'd slept for 3 years, invisible and silent, exactly how Don Carlo preferred his staff. She settled Diane in the corner, behind a folding screen she'd once used for laundry. "Stay here, Grandma. Please. I need to finish cleaning, and then we'll go. Just 2 hours. Can you stay quiet for 2 hours?" Diane's eyes, cloudy with confusion most days, suddenly sharpened. That rare clarity Lola both loved and feared. "You're scared of someone." "I'm always scared here." The truth slipped out. "Then why do you stay?" "Because the pay was triple any other housekeeping job in Houston. Because this one job covered Sunset Gardens, covered the medications, and covered the life Diane deserved after everything she'd sacrificed. Because Lola had learned to be invisible, and invisible was safe. Except tonight, she'd brought the only person who mattered into the monster's den. "I'll be back in 20 minutes. Please, Grandma. Don't move." But Diane never did follow rules she didn't understand. At 2:23 a.m., while Lola polished the glass dining room table until it gleamed like water, she heard it, the soft squeak of wheelchair wheels on marble. Her heart stopped. Through the doorway, she saw her grandmother rolling slowly down the corridor, heading straight toward the main entrance. Heading straight toward the sound of the front doors opening. Heading straight toward Don Carlo Vitali, home early, with fresh blood on his cufflinks and 6 armed men at his back. Time fractured. One moment, Lola was sprinting toward her grandmother's wheelchair, apologies and pleas dying in her throat. The next, she was frozen 3 feet away, watching the King of Texas collapse to his knees like someone had cut his strings. The bodyguards moved on instinct, hands reaching for weapons, safety catches clicking off in the silence. But Carlo's hand shot up, palm out, stopping them mid-draw. His eyes never left Diane's face. "Nah, Diane." His voice broke on her name, splintering into something raw and childlike. "Say viva, you're alive." Lola's mind couldn't process what she was seeing. This man, who'd once had a supplier's entire family relocated for a late shipment, was trembling. His perfectly tailored suit jacket crumpled as he sank lower until his forehead nearly touched the wheelchair's footrest. Behind them, someone's gun clattered to the floor. No one moved to pick it up. Diane's head tilted, studying the man kneeling before her with that faraway look that meant her mind was struggling through fog. But then her weathered hand, twisted from years of gripping wheelchair controls, reached out. Slowly. Deliberately. She touched Carlo's face. Bambino? The word came out uncertain, testing. Her thumb traced the scar above his left eyebrow, a scar Lola had never noticed until this moment. You're so tall now. Carlo's breath shattered. He caught her hand and pressed it against his cheek like a lifeline. You remember. God, you remember. I remember a little boy. Diane's voice strengthened, clarity breaking through like sunlight. Bleeding in an alley. Too stubborn to cry even when those boys, her other hand joined the first, cradling his face. My little boy. Then her eyes narrowed, that fierce maternal assessment Lola knew too well. You still look hungry. Still too thin. Still carrying the world like you have something to prove. And the king of Texas, the man who'd built an empire on fear and precision, laughed through his tears. A broken, desperate sound that echoed through the corridor like a confession. Lola stumbled backward, her mind screaming. This isn't real. This can't be real. One of the bodyguards shifted forward. Boss, should we leave? Carlo's voice cut through the air, still thick with emotion but edged with absolute authority. He didn't look away from Diane. All of you. Now. They hesitated. In 3 years, Lola had never seen them hesitate. I said leave. This time the command carried the weight of consequence. The men scattered like smoke, disappearing into the estate's shadows. Lola turned to follow, surely he meant her to, but Carlo's next words stopped her cold. Not you, Lola. He knew her name. In 3 years of invisible service, she'd assumed she was just the maid to him. But he knew her name. Carlo's hand was still covering Diane's, pressing it to his face like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. You brought her here. Tonight. In the middle of a blackout. His eyes finally met Lola's, red-rimmed and devastated, but carrying something she couldn't identify. You risked everything. I'm sorry, Lola's voice cracked. The care facility lost power, and her oxygen, I didn't know where else. You saved her life. Carlo's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Again. Again? Diane smiled, that knowing smile that meant her mind had found solid ground. This is my granddaughter. My Lola. She takes care of me now. Carlo's expression shifted, something profound settling behind his eyes. He released Diane's hand carefully, reverently, then stood. When he turned to face Lola fully, she saw tears still tracking down his face, unashamed, unwiped. Then she's family. The words fell like a verdict. Like a vow. You're both family now. Do you understand what that means in this house? Lola didn't. She couldn't. But Diane squeezed her hand, and somehow, impossibly, her grandmother was crying too. It means you're sacred, Carlo continued, his voice steady now despite the tears. It means you're protected. It means no one, touches you without answering to me. The impossible had just become real, and Lola's knees finally gave out. Brooklyn, 1990. Summer heat thick enough to choke on. The 12-year-old boy in the alley wasn't screaming anymore. He'd learned that screaming made it worse. So Carlo Vitali took each kick in silence, his thin body curled around the street Christopher metal his mother had pressed into his palm before the fever took her. Before the boat from Naples. Before everything turned to ash. Go back to Italy, greaseball. Another kick. We don't want your kind here. Carlo tasted blood. Counted stars exploding behind his eyes. Wondered if dying hurt worse than this. Then he heard the voice that would change everything. Get away from that child. Now. The boys turned. Carlo forced his swelling eyes open and saw her, a woman, maybe 45, holding a wooden cane like a weapon. She was outnumbered 5 to 1. She didn't care. This isn't your business, lady. The biggest one spat toward her feet. I'm making it my business. She stepped forward. And if you put one more hand on that boy, we'll see how tough you are when the police find you. They laughed. But something in her eyes, something fierce and immovable, made them hesitate. She pulled a camera from her purse and started clicking. I got all your faces now. All your names on my lips. Try me. They ran. Carlo passed out before she reached him. He woke 3 days later in a modest apartment that smelled like cinnamon and safety. A small girl with cornrows, maybe 5 years old, was dabbing his split lip with careful, gentle hands. Grandma says you have to hold still, the little girl whispered. She says you're going to be okay now. Diane appeared in the doorway, carrying soup that steamed like mercy. You're awake. Good. You scared me half to death, bambino. Carlo didn't know that word yet. Didn't know English beyond please, sorry, and I have no one. But he knew kindness when he tasted it in that soup. Her neighbors came by that first week. Warned her. You can't keep that Italian boy here, Diane. People are talking. His kind and our kind, it isn't right. My kind, Diane said, her voice as sharp as her cane, is human beings who help children. If that isn't your kind, get off my stoop. She taught him English. Taught him dignity. Taught him that the size of your heart mattered more than the size of your fists. For 3 months, Carlo learned what having a mother felt like. Little Lola became the sister he'd never had, bringing him picture books and sharing her crayons. Then Uncle Keith found him. Carlo knew something was wrong the moment the man filled Diane's doorway, expensive suit, dead eyes, and the smell of violence barely contained. There you are, nephew. Keith's smile didn't reach anywhere near human. Family's been looking everywhere. This is his family now. Diane stood between them, cane gripped white-knuckle tight. You're not taking him. Keith's laugh was ice water. Lady, you have no idea who you're talking to. The Vitali family takes care of its own. He grabbed Carlo's arm and yanked hard. Say goodbye to your charity case, kid. You got a different education waiting. No! Carlo fought, tears finally breaking through. Nana, please. Nana? Keith's backhand sent Diane stumbling. Little Lola screamed. You aren't his grandmother. You're nobody. Carlo watched helplessly as Keith dragged him toward the door, Diane struggling to her feet, and Lola crying. I'll find you again. Carlo sobbed in broken English. I promise, Nana. I'll find you. Keith shoved him into a black car. Forget her, boy. Where we're going, there's no room for weakness. The family business doesn't forgive soft hearts. That night, Carlo learned what the family business meant. Learned that violence was currency. Learned that 12-year-old orphans either became predators or prey. He chose predator. But he never stopped searching. For 35 years, he searched. Every resource, every connection, every database. Diane had vanished like smoke, moved away, changed numbers, and left no trail. He didn't know about the accident that had stolen her ability to walk. Didn't know she'd ended up in Texas, raising her granddaughter alone. Didn't know Lola had forgotten the little broken boy she'd once helped with crayons and picture books. Until tonight. Now, standing in his Texas estate, watching Diane's wheelchair catch the hallway light, Carlo finally understood why he'd never found her. He'd been searching for the wrong name. Diane Jackson, he whispered. You got married. Changed your name. Widowed, Diane corrected gently. And you became Don Carlo Vitali, the King of Texas. Her smile held equal parts pride and sorrow. I saw your picture in the paper 5 years ago. Couldn't believe it. My bambino, all grown up. I wanted to reach out, but I'd become exactly what Keith made me. Carlo's voice went hollow. A monster. No. Diane's hand found his. You became a survivor. There's a difference. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Heavy. Multiple. Wrong. Carlo's head snapped up, instinct screaming. His bodyguards shouldn't be back yet. And these footsteps were coming from the east wing. The locked east wing. His hand went to the gun at his spine just as Eddie, his enforcer, stepped into the corridor. But Eddie wasn't alone. 6 men flanked him, all armed, all wearing expressions that made Carlo's blood freeze. Sorry, boss. Eddie's smile was poison. But word got out about your little weakness. His eyes slid to Diane's wheelchair. And Harold sends his regards. The guns came up. And Carlo realized with crystalline horror that finding his family again might mean watching them die. The standoff lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Carlo moved, gun drawn, body shielding Diane's wheelchair, and his voice cut through the tension like a blade. Eddie. Put the guns down, or I'll assume Harold's already paid you enough to die for him. Eddie's smile faltered. Behind him, his men shifted, uncertain. They'd been Carlo's soldiers once, before Harold's money started talking. This doesn't have to get messy, boss. Eddie's gun stayed up. Just step aside. Harold just wants the old lady and the maid. You can keep your empire. No. The word was absolute. You have 3 seconds to leave my house. After that, I won't ask twice. The men looked at each other. Looked at Carlo's unwavering aim. Looked at Eddie, who was suddenly sweating. They lowered their weapons. This ISN over, Eddie spat, backing toward the door. Harold will. Tell Harold, Carlo interrupted, his voice dropping to something lethal and quiet, that if he wants my family, he'll have to go through me. And remind him what happened to the last man who tried. They left. But the message was clear, war was coming. Carlo waited until the front doors slammed before his hands started shaking. Diane's fingers closed around his wrist, steadying him. Breathe, bambino. We're safe. For now, Carlo thought. But he didn't say it. By dawn, Eddie was gone, not dead, but exiled, stripped of rank and territory. The remaining staff gathered in the main hall as Carlo made his declaration, Diane and Lola are family. Anyone who has a problem with that can follow Eddie out the door. No one moved. Fear was a powerful adhesive. But over the next week, something stranger than fear took root in the estate, transformation. The master suite was gutted and rebuilt within 72 hours, wider doorways, a roll-in shower, and reinforced floors for the wheelchair. Carlo supervised every detail personally, rejecting the contractor's first attempt because the bathroom grab bars were institutional, not dignified. She deserves better, he told the bewildered foreman. Do it again. Lola watched from doorways, still half convinced this was a fever dream. When Carlo found her scrubbing floors in the east wing, he physically took the brush from her hands. What are you doing? My job? Her voice came out small. Your job is family now. He said it like it was simple. Like it changed everything. You're my sister, Lola. Sisters don't scrub floors in my house. The word sister hit her like a fist. She'd spent 3 years invisible. Now this man, this terrifying, powerful man, was rewriting reality with a single sentence. The first family dinner was aggressively awkward. Carlo sat at the head of the table in a $1,000 suit, Diane to his right, and Lola to his left. The chef had prepared Italian, veal piccata, risotto, and tiramisu. Diane took one look and shook her head. This is lovely, bambino. But tomorrow, we're having my cooking. Carlo blinked. You cook? Baby, I cook. Her smile was pure mischief. Real food. Soul food. The kind that sticks to your ribs. The next evening, the estate's sterile kitchen filled with smells Carlo hadn't known he'd been missing: collard greens simmering with hem hocks, cornbread browning in cast iron, mac and cheese bubbling under a golden crust. Diane directed the chef like a general, Lola chopped onions, and both women laughed at some private joke. Carlo stood in the doorway, watching. When Diane noticed him, she waved him over. "Stop lurking. Come taste this." She lifted a spoonful of collard greens to his lips. He tasted salt, smoke, and something indefinable that felt like memory. And suddenly he was 12 again, sitting in her tiny Brooklyn kitchen, eating her cooking while she hummed old gospels. His eyes burned. "Too spicy?" Diane asked, concerned. "Perfect." His voice cracked. "It's perfect, Nana." The staff whispered about it for days, how Don Carlo Vitali cried over vegetables. But when one of the housekeepers mentioned it within earshot, Carlo's response silenced the gossip forever. "You don't kneel to me," he told his assembled employees, one hand resting on Diane's wheelchair. "You kneel to her. And if I ever hear disrespect about my family again, you'll wish Eddie's exile was your punishment." By week's end, the estate had transformed. Carlo pushed Diane's wheelchair through the gardens himself, pointing out flowers and telling her stories about deals and territories in a voice scrubbed clean of violence. Lola found herself eating breakfast with them, laughing at Diane's stories about Carlo's childhood attempts to cook pasta. For brief, fragile moments, the fortress felt like a home. But outside the gates, black SUVs circled. Harold was watching. Waiting. And Carlo knew the sanctuary couldn't last. The photographs spread across Harold's desk like a confession. Carlo pushing a wheelchair through garden paths. Carlo laughing at a dinner table with two black women. Carlo's hand resting protectively on an elderly woman's shoulder. Harold the Scorpion Mancini lifted one photo, studying it with the detached precision of a man dissecting weakness. For 20 years he'd waited in Carlo's shadow. 20 years of watching the King of Texas build an empire that should have been his. Well. His voice was silk over razor wire. The king has a heart after all. His lieutenant shifted uncomfortably. "Boss, the men are saying Vitali's lost his edge. That he's gone soft over some crippled old woman and a maid." "Not soft." Harold set the photo down carefully, his mind already calculating trajectories, pressure points, and exactly where to apply force for maximum collapse. Vulnerable. There's a difference. He smiled, and it was a terrible thing. And hearts can be stopped. "You want us to take them out?" "No." Harold's finger traced Diane's face in the photograph. "I want us to make Carlo watch while we do. I want him broken before we take his crown." And then, his smile widened. "Then we take everything." The black SUVs appeared 3 days later. Lola noticed them first. 3 years of hypervigilance had taught her to catalog every vehicle, every shadow, every potential threat. The same black Escalade was parked across from the estate's north gate at 9 a.m. Different one at the south entrance by noon. A third circling the perimeter road at dusk. She found Carlo in his office, reviewing supply routes. "We're being watched." He looked up sharply. "Where?" "Everywhere." Her voice shook despite her attempt at control. 3 vehicles, rotating positions. "They're mapping the property." Carlo was already moving, pulling up security feeds on multiple screens. There, the SUVs, coordinated, professional. His jaw tightened. "Harold." "Who's Harold?" "Someone who's been waiting a long time for me to give him an opening." Carlo's hand slammed down on the desk. "And I just handed him one." Within the hour, his war room filled with loyalists, 6 men who'd bled with him, killed for him, and built empires beside him. But Carlo noticed the absences too. 3 empty chairs. Eddie's people, now Harold's. The Scorpion's making his move, Carlo said without preamble. He's surveilling the estate, cataloging our defenses. He knows about Diane and Lola. Then send them away, his consigliera suggested. Hide them until this blows over. No. The word came from Diane herself, her wheelchair rolling through the doorway that Lola held open. We're not running. Every man in the room stood instinctively, not from respect for Carlo, but from something in Diane's presence that demanded it. Carlo crossed to her. Nah, this isn't. Isn't what? Isn't my choice? Her eyes, sharp and clear, met his. You think I survived 60 years on this earth by running from bullies? You think I raised my granddaughter to hide when things get hard? This is different. Harold will find out what happens when he threatens my family. Diane's voice carried steel beneath the warmth. Now stop trying to protect me and start figuring out how we protect each other. The room went silent. Carlo's consigliera stared. No one spoke to Don Carlo Vitali like that. No one. Carlo's face transformed, not with anger, but with something that looked almost like relief. He knelt beside her wheelchair. You're sure? I lost you once, Bambino. I'm not losing you again by running away. Her hand cupped his cheek. We stand together, or we don't stand at all. He kissed her palm, then stood, his expression hardening into the mask that had made men fear him. Then we fortify. Double the perimeter guards. Rotate shifts every 4 hours. No one in or out without my personal clearance. The meeting dissolved into tactical planning. Lola stayed by the door, watching Carlo orchestrate his defense with the precision of a surgeon, and felt the weight of what was coming. That night, she found a note slipped under her door. 4 words in blocky handwriting. Smart King. Smarter Scorpion. Her blood turned to ice. Someone inside the house. Someone on Harold's payroll, close enough to reach her room. She ran to find Carlo but stopped at his office door when she heard voices inside. Telling you, boss, this is suicide. You can't fight Harold and protect civilians. The speaker sounded satisfied. Smug. Lola recognized the voice, Marco, one of Carlo's oldest guards. Then what do you suggest? Carlo's voice was tight. Give him what he wants. The women. They aren't worth dying for. The sound of a gun cocking froze Lola's heart. Say that again, Carlo whispered, and I'll show you exactly what they're worth. A pause. Then footsteps. The door flew open, and Marco stumbled out, his face white, nearly colliding with Lola. He looked at her with something between pity and contempt. You don't know what you've done to him. What you've cost us all. Then he was gone, and Lola stood shaking in the hallway, the note crumpled in her fist, realizing with cold certainty that the enemy wasn't just outside the walls. He was already inside. The Montana safe house had everything, reinforced walls, off-grid power, and enough supplies for 6 months. Carlo had used it twice before for high-value targets who needed to disappear. The plane was fueled, the route planned, and the security detail already in position. He spread the maps across his desk at dawn, his voice steady as he explained it to Diane and Lola. You leave in 2 hours. New identities, full protection, 0 digital footprint. Harold will never find you. Diane listened in silence, her hands folded in her lap. When he finished, she wheeled her chair directly in front of his office door and set the brake. No. Carlo blinked. Nah, you don't understand. No, Bambino. Her voice was gentle but immovable. You don't understand. I didn't spend 35 years wondering if you were alive just to run away the moment I find you again. This isn't running, it's survival. Carlo's control was cracking, desperation bleeding through. Harold will use you against me. He'll hurt you to break me, and it will work. Then we make sure he can't. Diane's eyes held his. But we do it together. You could die. I could die crossing the street. I could die in my sleep. She reached for his hand. But I won't die running from my family. I lost you once for 35 years. I'm not losing you again, not for Harold, not for anyone. Lola stood by the window, watching the black SUVs circle like sharks. Every survival instinct she'd honed over 3 years screamed at her to take the escape route. To get Diane to safety. To run. But she thought of Carlo on his knees, crying. Thought of him pushing Diane's wheelchair through gardens, laughing at her stories. Thought of the word sister and what it meant to finally, impossibly, belong somewhere. I'm staying too. Her voice surprised her with its steadiness. Carlo's head snapped toward her. Lola, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She turned from the window. Because she's right. We're family now. And family doesn't abandon each other when things get hard. You're both insane. Carlo's voice cracked completely, his composure shattering. You understand what's coming? Harold won't just kill you. He'll make it slow. He'll make me watch. He'll learn, Diane interrupted, her voice carrying sudden steel, what happens when he threatens the people we love. Carlo stared at her, then at Lola, then back at Diane. Something in his face shifted, the careful control giving way to raw emotion. He laughed, a broken sound somewhere between despair and wonder. You're really not leaving. We learned from the best, Diane said, and her smile held pride and defiance in equal measure. You taught us what it means to stand your ground, Bambino. Now it's our turn to show you. The silence stretched. Then Carlo crossed to Diane's wheelchair, knelt, and pressed his forehead against her hands. If anything happens to you. It won't. Her fingers threaded through his hair. Because you're going to protect us, and we're going to protect you. That's what family does. He stayed there for a long moment, then stood, his expression transforming into something Lola had never seen before, not the King of Texas, not the ruthless Don, but a man fighting for everything that mattered. Then we fortify. His voice hardened with purpose. We turn this estate into a fortress Harold can't breach. We bring in every loyal soldier, every weapon, every advantage we have. He looked at both of them. But if I give an order, any order, you follow it. Immediately. No arguments. We'll see, Diane said sweetly. Despite everything, Carlo almost smiled. The next 48 hours transformed the estate into a war zone. Steel shutters installed on every window. Panic room reinforced with titanium doors. Armed guards tripled, rotating in shifts of 4. Carlo moved Diane and Lola into the central wing, the most defensible position, and personally checked every lock, every camera, and every possible breach point. Lola watched him work with mechanical precision, channeling fear into preparation. She helped where she could, memorizing evacuation routes, learning which rooms had reinforced walls, and understanding the security protocols. At night, they ate together in the fortified dining room. Carlo insisted on normal meals and normal conversation, clinging to the domesticity they'd built like it could shield them from what was coming. The final dinner before the storm felt surreal, Diane's collard greens and cornbread, Lola's sweet tea, and Carlo's expensive wine that Diane refused to drink. They talked about nothing important. Everything is important. When this is over, Diane said, her hand covering Carlo's, you're going to teach me about this empire of yours. The legitimate parts. There aren't many legitimate parts, nah. Then we'll make some. She squeezed his hand. We'll build something worth protecting. Lola saw Carlo's throat work and saw him struggling with words that wouldn't come. Finally, he just nodded. Outside, the SUVs had multiplied. 6 now. Maybe more. Harold was done watching. The attack would come soon, and they all knew it. But when Diane reached across the table and took both their hands, Carlos scarred from violence, Lola's calloused from service, Lola felt something stronger than fear. She felt chosen. She felt ready. She felt like family. The tiramisu had just arrived when the world exploded. The first blast took out the east wing, a percussion wave that shattered crystal and threw Lola from her chair. Her ears rang, vision swimming, and through the chaos she heard Carlos shouting orders, his gun already drawn. Then the windows erupted inward. Glass became shrapnel. Gunfire tore through silk curtains. The security alarm screamed too late as figures in black tactical gear poured through the breaches, 4 from the east, 3 from the west, and more coming through holes that shouldn't exist in reinforced walls. Go! Carlo was already moving, one hand firing precise shots while the other grabbed Diane's wheelchair. Panic room, now! They ran, Carlo pushing Diane at a dead sprint, Lola stumbling behind, the wheelchair's wheels leaving tracks through broken glass and spilled wine. Behind them, the dining room became a war zone. Carlo's guards engaged Harold's men in brutal close-quarters combat, the sound of gunfire mixing with screams and the crunch of furniture being used as cover. An explosion rocked the north corridor. Carlo swerved, redirecting them through the servants' passage. This way, stay low. A burst of automatic fire stitched across the wall inches from Lola's head. She dropped, gasping, and felt Carlo's hand haul her upright without breaking stride. Keep moving. The panic room was 30 yards ahead. 20. 10. Carlos slammed his palm against the biometric scanner. The heavy door should have opened immediately, 2 tons of reinforced steel programmed to respond in 1.3 seconds. Nothing happened. No, Carlo hit it again, his face draining of color as understanding crashed through. They hacked it. Harold hacked the system. Footsteps thundered behind them. Multiple sets, getting closer. The formal dining room, Diane said, her voice somehow steady despite everything. The one we renovated. Reinforced walls, single entrance. It was the worst option. A trap instead of salvation. But it was all they had. Carlo spun the wheelchair, racing back the way they'd come, taking a different corridor. They burst into the formal dining room, the one with white tablecloths and wine glasses still pristine because they'd never used it, the one Carlo had reinforced for family dinners that hadn't happened yet. He slammed the door and threw the deadbolt. Grabbed a chair and wedged it under the handle. It won't hold long. His breathing was ragged, gun reloading automatically. When they breach, you both get behind the table and you don't move. Understand? Lola nodded, terror making her mute. But Diane wheeled herself forward, positioning her wheelchair directly between Carlo and the door. Nah, what are you? Hush. She set the brake with calm finality. You protected me once. Now it's my turn. You can't, Carlo's voice cracked. You can't protect me from bullets. Watch me. The door shuddered. Once. Twice. The wood began to splinter. Carlo grabbed Diane's wheelchair, trying to pull her back, but she gripped the armrests with surprising strength. I said no, Bambino. You stand behind me. I'm not letting you die for me. And I'm not letting you die at all. Her eyes blazed with the same fierce authority that had faced down racist gangs in Brooklyn alleys. You're my boy. Mine. And no one takes my children from me. The door exploded inward. 6 men poured through, weapons raised, and time crystallized into slow motion. Lola saw their faces, professional killers, paid well, untroubled by conscience. Saw their guns tracking toward Carlo. Saw Diane's wheelchair planted like a monument between them and their target. The lead gunman hesitated. Just for a second. Just long enough to speak. Move the old lady, and we'll make it quick for all of you. No. Diane's voice rang with absolute conviction. Not my boy. You'll have to go through me first. The gunman's finger tightened on the trigger. Carlo moved, shoving Diane's wheelchair aside with desperate strength, his body replacing hers, his gun coming up in the same fluid motion. He fired 3 times. The lead gunman went down. Then all hell truly broke loose. Muzzle flashes lit the room like lightning. Carlo moved with lethal precision, using the dining table for cover, his shots economical and devastating. 2 more attackers fell. But there were too many, and Carlo's magazine was running dry. Lola saw it happening, saw the gunman flanking left, saw his weapon swing toward Carlo's exposed side, saw the future written in the angle of the barrel. She grabbed the crystal vase from the table and threw it with every ounce of terror-fueled strength. It caught the gunman across the temple. He staggered, the shot going wide, and Carlo's next bullet finished what Lola started. But 3 attackers remained, and Carlo's gun clicked empty. The lead gunman, still alive despite the chest wound, because of course Harold would send someone wearing body armor, smiled through bloody teeth. Out of bullets, Vitali? That's a shame. He raised his weapon toward Diane. Carlo lunged, but he was too far, too slow, and Lola watched her grandmother's face stay calm, impossibly, defiantly calm, as death aimed at her heart. Then the dining room's far window shattered. A figure in black dropped through, not Harold's men, but someone else, moving with fluid grace, weapons already firing. 2 of Harold's soldiers went down before they could turn. The body-armored gunman spun toward this new threat, and in that half-second of distraction, Carlo closed the distance. No gun now. Just his hands, his training, and his absolute fury. The fight was brutal and intimate. But the gunman was wounded, and Carlo was fighting for everything that mattered. It ended with a sickening crack. Silence fell, broken only by ragged breathing and the distant sound of continued fighting elsewhere in the estate. The figure from the window stepped forward, pulling off their balaclava. It was Eddie. Carlo's gun, retrieved from a fallen attacker, came up instantly, aimed at his former enforcer's head. Easy, boss. Eddie's hands rose slowly. I'm not with Harold. You walked out. You. I set up a meet with Harold's lieutenant. Made him think I was ready to flip. Eddie's expression was grim. Got the attack plans, the timing, everything. Came back to warn you, but I was too late to stop the breach. Why should I believe you? Because, Eddie said quietly, his eyes moving to Diane's wheelchair, I finally understand what's worth protecting. And it isn't money or territory. He lowered his weapon completely. It's family, boss. Even when they drive you crazy. Carlo stared at him for a long moment. Then. Another explosion. Closer this time. The estate's south wall, from the sound of it. And through the broken window came a voice amplified by megaphone, smooth and venomous. Carlo! I know you can hear me. Harold's voice carried across the grounds. Your guards are dead or dying. Your walls are breached. And I'm coming for what you love most. A pause. Send out the women, and I'll let you live. Refuse, and I'll make you watch while I... The megaphone cut off mid-threat. A single gunshot echoed. Then silence. Lola's blood ran cold. What does that mean? Carlo's face had gone pale. It means Harold's inside. And he's done playing. Through the shattered window, they could see flames rising from the south wing. Hear footsteps, many footsteps, approaching through the estate's ravaged corridors. How many bullets do we have left? Diane's voice was steady, but Lola heard the tremor underneath. Carlo checked his gun. Eddie did the same. Not enough, Eddie said quietly. Carlo looked at Diane, at Lola, and at the barricaded door that wouldn't hold much longer. Then we make them count. He moved to Diane's wheelchair and gripped her hand. And we don't go down easy. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. The door handle began to turn. The door exploded inward in a hail of buckshot and splintered oak. Harold's men flooded through, 8 of them, weapons raised, moving with the coordinated precision of professionals. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd never seen Don Carlo Vitali fight for something other than power. Carlo moved like violence incarnate. The first 2 men went down before they cleared the doorway, headshots, efficient, final. Eddie flanked left, providing cover fire, but Carlo was already advancing, using the overturned dining table as mobile cover, his movements a brutal ballet of survival. A gunman emerged from behind the credenza. Carlo's gun clicked empty. Without hesitation, he grabbed a fallen chair and swung it like a club, crushing the man's windpipe. Another attacker rushed him. Carlo used the body as a shield, then snapped the man's neck with a practiced twist. Lola watched in horror and awe as the man she'd served tea to that morning became something primal and terrifying. Then she saw the rifle barrel tracking toward Diane. No! She grabbed the fireplace poker, heavy wrought iron, ornamental but deadly, and swung with every ounce of desperate strength. It connected with the gunman's shoulder, throwing his aim wide. The shot went into the ceiling instead of her grandmother's heart. The gunman turned on her, fury in his eyes. Carlo was there in an instant, gun retrieved from another fallen body, the shot so close it left powder burns on the attacker's forehead. Touch her, Carlo growled, and you die slow. He died fast instead. But more kept coming. Harold had brought an army. Eddie went down with a bullet to the leg, still firing from the ground. Lola wielded her poker like a baseball bat, her fear transformed into fierce protection. And Carlo was everywhere at once, a whirlwind of lethal intent, his body a barrier between his family and death. Then the gunshot that changed everything. Lola saw it happen in terrible clarity, the shooter in the doorway, the rifle aimed at Diane's wheelchair, the finger tightening on the trigger. Saw Carlo's eyes track the trajectory. Saw him make the choice. He lunged, putting his body between the bullet and his grandmother. The shot took him high in the chest. He stumbled, blood blooming across his white shirt, but somehow stayed upright. His gun rose. Fire D. The shooter collapsed. Carlo! Diane's scream tore through the chaos. He waved her back, his other hand pressed against the wound, blood seeping between his fingers. Stay down. For attackers remained, and they smelled victory in Carlo's blood. But wounded predators are the most dangerous. Carlo fought like a man with nothing left to lose, every movement costing him, every breath ragged with pain. He used furniture, used bodies, and used the room itself as weapons. Eddie provided covering fire despite his own injury. Lola swung her poker with wild desperation, connecting more often than she missed. And Diane wheeled her chair into the fray, grabbing a fallen gun, her hands steady despite everything, her voice commanding, "Get away from my children." She was fired. Once. Twice. One attacker fell, shock written on his face that an elderly woman in a wheelchair had shot him. The remaining 3 hesitated. Fatal mistake. Carlo capitalized ruthlessly. 2 more went down in rapid succession. The last turned to flee. He made it 3 steps before Carlo's bullet found his spine. Silence crashed through the dining room like a physical force. Carlo swayed, his face gray, his shirt soaked crimson. He turned to check on Diane and on Lola, his eyes cataloging that they were alive, whole, and safe. Then his knees buckled. Bambino! Diane was already moving, her wheelchair rolling over debris and bodies, reaching him as he collapsed. She caught his head before it hit the floor, cradling his bloodied face in her lap. No, 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 stay with me. You're safe, Carlo's voice was barely a whisper. Both safe. You took a bullet for me. Tears streamed down Diane's face. You took a bullet for me, you foolish, beautiful boy. Always, Nana. His hand found hers, grip weakening. Always. Eddie was already on his phone, shouting for medics, for extraction, for help. Lola pressed her hands against Carlo's wound, trying to stop the bleeding, her own tears making it hard to see. Don't you dare die, Diane commanded, her voice fierce despite the tears. You hear me, Carlo Vitali? You don't get to find me after 35 years just to leave me again. You don't get to. Her voice broke. Carlo's eyes were closing. Stay awake! Diane's hand struck his cheek, not hard, but sharp enough to focus him. That's an order, Bambino. You stay with us. His eyes fluttered open. Yes, Nana. That's right. And you're going to keep breathing, and you're going to let the doctors fix you, and then you're going to have Sunday dinner with your family. You understand? The faintest smile touched his lips. Yes, ma'am. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy. Deliberate. Alone. Harold the Scorpion Mancini stepped through the destroyed doorway, surveying the carnage with clinical detachment. His suit was immaculate. His gun was casual in his hand, like an afterthought. Well, he said softly. Looks like the king can bleed after all. Carlo tried to rise. Diane held him down. Eddie's gun came up, but Harold's was faster. Drop it, or I shoot the old lady first. Eddie hesitated. Dropped the weapon. Harold smiled, stepping over bodies, his polished shoes crunching on broken glass. 35 years of searching for a mother figure, Carlo? How poetic. How wonderfully, perfectly weak. He raised his gun, aiming at Diane's head. Let's see if you can watch her die, or if your heart gives out first. The gunshot was deafening. Harold staggered, blood spreading across his chest. His gun dropped from nerveless fingers. He turned, disbelief on his face, and found Lola standing 10 feet away, trembling hands gripping the pistol she'd picked up from a fallen guard. Smoke curled from the barrel. You, Harold choked on blood. You're just I'm family, Lola said, her voice shaking but certain. And nobody threatens my family. Harold collapsed. But as he fell, his hand found a backup piece, his finger finding the trigger, the barrel swinging toward Lola with dying spite. Carlo's shot, fired from the floor, from Diane's lap, with the last of his strength, caught Harold between the eyes. The scorpion fell and didn't rise again. Carlo's gun clattered to the floor. His eyes closed. No! Diane shook him. Carlo! Carlo! Sirens wailed in the distance. Medics were coming. But as Lola watched Carlo's chest barely rise and fall, blood pooling beneath him, she wondered if they'd arrive in time. Or if saving his family would cost him everything. Carlo woke to the smell of garlic simmering in olive oil.
You.
For 3 confused
Thanks,
seconds,
Mom.
he thought he was 12
He's
again,
stable.
waking in Diane's
You're
Brooklyn
doing
apartment,
great.
safe and whole and loved. Then pain lanced through his chest, and memory crashed back, the attack, the bullets, Harold's dead eyes staring at nothing. He tried to sit up. His body screamed in protest. Easy, boss. Eddie's voice came from the corner, where he sat with his own bandaged leg propped up. You took a bullet to the chest. Collapsed lung, internal bleeding, the whole 9 yards. You've been out for 2 days. Diane, Lola. Terrorizing the kitchen staff as we speak. Eddie's smile was genuine for maybe the first time Carlo had ever seen. Your grandmother told the chef his carbonara was an insult to Italy. Then she took over. Pretty sure she's running the whole estate now. Carlo's laugh turned into a cough that tasted like copper. But he was smiling. The door burst open, and Diane rolled through, Lola right behind her, both women's faces transforming from worry to relief to fury in rapid succession. You're awake. Diane's voice shook. Good. Because I need to kill you myself for scaring me like that. She wheeled to his bedside, grabbed his hand, and promptly burst into tears. Carlo had seen Diane face down gangs, defy her community, and shield him from bullets with her own body. He'd never seen her cry like this, raw, desperate sobs that shook her whole frame. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his own eyes burning. "Nah, I'm so sorry. You took a bullet for me." Her grip was crushing. "You almost died. You could have," her voice broke completely. "I just got you back, Bambino. I can't lose you again. I can't." Lola took Diane's other hand, then reached for Carlo's, creating a chain that bound them together. "No more running," she said firmly, her voice thick with emotion. "No more losing each other. We made it through hell together, and we're staying together. All of us." "All of us," Carlo repeated, the words feeling like a vow. Over the next week, Carlo learned what it meant to heal surrounded by family. Diane supervised his recovery with military precision, appearing hourly with soup, medications, and stern lectures about taking better care of himself. Lola read to him from books she'd found in his library, books he'd bought but never had time to open. Eddie brought updates from the outside world. Harold's faction had collapsed the moment their leader died. Most had been absorbed back into Carlo's organization. 3 who'd participated in the assault were buried in unmarked graves. "Word spread," Eddie said quietly. "That you went to war for your family. That you took a bullet for an old woman in a wheelchair." He paused. "Respect's changed, boss. It isn't just fear anymore. It's something else." "What?" Carlo asked. "Loyalty. Real loyalty." Eddie met his eyes. "The kind you can't buy." On the 8th day, Carlo was strong enough to sit up without gasping. Diane wheeled herself to his bedside, her expression serious. "I need to tell you something." Her hands twisted in her lap. "About what happened after Keith took you away." Carlo waited. "I tried to find you. For years, I searched. But Keith had hidden you too well, and her voice caught. "I had an accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. Crushed my spine. By the time I could function again, you'd vanished completely into the underworld." Nah. Let me finish." She took a shaky breath. "I thought I'd failed you. I thought that wherever you were, you believed I'd abandoned you. That guilt, it ate at me for 35 years. And then you appeared, grown and dangerous and powerful, and I realized," tears spilled over. "You never forgot me. You searched too." "Every day," Carlo whispered. "Every single day." She pulled him into a careful hug, mindful of his injuries, and they stayed like that, grandmother and grandson, reunited across decades of pain and loss. When she pulled back, her smile was radiant through the tears. "So here's what we're going to do. You're going to recover. Then we're going to have a proper family dinner, the 3 of us and whoever else you consider family. And we're going to make this official." "Official?" "Lola's adoption papers." Diane gestured to her granddaughter. "Making her legally your sister. Making us legally your family. No more crime boss and his employees. Real family. Papers, lawyers, the whole thing." Carlo looked at Lola, who was crying openly now. "You want that?" "More than anything," she whispered. He reached for her hand. "Then that's what we do." 3 weeks later, Carlo stood, still healing, still hurting, but standing, in the formal dining room they'd fought so hard to defend. It had been rebuilt, the bullet holes plastered over, and the blood scrubbed away. But the table remained, along with the memories of what they'd survived together. The estate had transformed. Where once there'd been cold marble and distant elegance, now there were family photos, Diane's knitting basket, and Lola's books. The fortress had become a home. Eddie stood with a dozen of Carlo's most trusted men, witnessing as the lawyer read the adoption papers. Lola became Lola Vitali. Diane became Diane Vitali. Family-in-law, as they already were in heart. When it was done, Carlo turned to address his assembled people. His voice was still rough from the collapsed lung, but it carried authority. "I built this empire on fear and control," he said. "On the belief that power meant dominance. But these two women," he gestured to Diane and Lola. "They taught me something I'd forgotten since I was 12 years old. Power isn't about how many men you command or how much territory you control." He moved to Diane's wheelchair and placed his hand on her shoulder. "True power is knowing what you're willing to die for, what you're willing to live for, and having the courage to protect it." The room was silent. "So here's the new rule," Carlo continued. "Family comes first. Always. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now." No one moved. Carlo smiled, the smile of a 12-year-old boy who'd finally found his way home, and knelt beside Diane's wheelchair. She cupped his face in her weathered hands, and Lola joined them, her arms wrapping around both. In that moment, watching the King of Texas kneeling before a woman in a wheelchair, his enemies would have seen weakness. His family knew better. They'd seen what happened when you threatened the people Carlo Vitali loved. And throughout the criminal underworld, a new message spread: Don Carlo Vitali had changed. He'd found something worth fighting for beyond power. He'd found family. And God help anyone who tried to take it away. 6 months later, Diane was teaching Carlo to make proper Sunday gravy when the call came. Eddie's voice was urgent on the speaker. "Boss, we've got a situation. Someone's asking to meet with you. Says it's about your mother." Carlo's blood froze. "My mother died in Italy. Before I came to America." That's what I told him. Eddie paused. "But he says he has proof she survived. And he knows where to find her." Diane's wooden spoon clattered into the pot. Lola's hand found Carlo's shoulder. Because if this was true, if Carlo's real mother was alive somewhere, it would change everything. Again.